I'm Emmett with Clawhammer Supply. Today, we're at Riverbend Malt House in Asheville, North Carolina.
Brent, my business partner, and I started the business in 2010.
Brian and I worked as environmental consultants out on the coast, and when the housing market crashed, we went looking for encore careers.
When we started, there were no craft maltsters in the country. There was like one other in Colorado, and then another one starting up about the same time in Massachusetts.
Okay.
When we started looking through the lens of finding something that was tied to sustainability and supporting local farmers, malting quickly rose to the top of the pile.
We just saw craft beer beginning to explode and saw a need for a malt supplier in our region.
In its most basic form, what is malting?
Malting is essentially wetting grain, getting it to germinate, and then drying it back down so a brewer can use it in a mash. We take that to the super high science level.
It's pretty nerdy stuff. We're nitpicking, but that's what we do here.
There's really like 5 parts to malting. Most people just talk about the 3 parts, which is steeping, germination, and kilning. But on the front end of that, you've got sourcing, cleaning, and grading before it even gets to the malt house. Once it comes in here, it's pretty much ready to go into the steep tank, which we have right up here. This is a 2-ton steeping vessel that's been custom built for Riverbend.
You're steeping that in water?
Just water.
Okay.
We run 3 cycles, basically, of submersions. In between each of those cycles, there's an air rest period that can vary from 8 to 12 hours, generally speaking. Once the grain starts to germinate, it'll have what's called chit. During the chitting stage, it'll go onto the floor where it starts to respire.
So right now we've got it's Kentucky Distillers Malt on the floor. So this is actually a new R&D project for us. So this is we're about middle of day 3 of germination right now.
The rake is our turning unit. We turn the material to get fresh air in, CO2 and other gases out, and keep the material from matting up. We turn the material 2 directions, 3 times a day, every single day. We are keeping the humidity very high. We want to approach 100% humidity in the room. We keep the temperature at around 60 to 62 degrees, and we're monitoring the temperature of the bed itself too. If the temperature starts getting too high, you'll get all kinds of crazy things happening in there that you don't want. If the temperature gets too low, you slow down germination to a place that it's not developing anymore.
Okay. And then how much longer will this have to go?
Yeah, so we'll put it in the kiln tomorrow morning.
Okay, so that's pretty much...
We're pretty close to being done.
Okay.
So now we've steeped, you've germinated, and we're going to go into the kiln. We try to do most of our kilning within a 24-hour window. In that, there's several stages, like you have an open free dry, you'll do a forced dry, you'll do a curing. So in the free dry stage, we're really just trying to get the moisture out to the point that germination stops. A lot of people think the heat stops the germination. It's actually the removal of water which will stop the germination process.
Okay.
So the modification, once it runs out of water, it just quits modifying.
Okay.
And then you'll develop all your color and flavor in our curing process, which is after you've pulled most of the moisture out. That's for a base malt. Now if you want to add some color, there's other tricks at the beginning where you're going to steam or recirculate air back through. It's kind of like brewing. You know, any number of temperatures and times and pathways to do what you want to do.
Right.
You know? Yeah, on this side of the building, we're all manual over here. We're still floor malting in the traditional method. And then on the other side of the building, we're pretty much fully automatic.
So you guys do both floor malting and pneumatic malting. Could you just give a basic difference between, or likeness between the 2 ways to malt?
So the floor malted material is germinated literally on a floor. It's a very traditional technique. We've now built a custom malting system that's pneumatic driven and fully automated that helps us to mimic what we were doing in our floor malting process, except it's fully automated. So this is our large pneumatic steep tank. It holds 10 metric tons, or about 22,000 pounds of dry material plus 2,000 or 3,000 gallons of water. It's fully automated, so once the grain goes into the tank, it'll do its first steep cycle, and then we'll pull CO2 off, and do a second steep cycle, and then we'll probably transfer that via slurry, which is that line, the 6-inch stainless steel line that goes into that vessel right there, which is a germination kiln combo.
That's the all-in-one, I guess.
Yeah. What's different about that than what we do on the floor.
Well, conquering my fear of heights today.
Is on the floor, you're moving that rake through there to get the heat out and get oxygen in. In this vessel, I'm constantly blowing that air through there and controlling the temp at all times. It's a pretty elaborate system. We have a bunch of data that comes off of that.
So with the pneumatic process, it seems like you could do a lot of customization and kind of dial it in for something specific. Is there anything you're kind of doing outside the box with that system?
Yeah, with the new automated setup, we're actually have the ability to offer custom malts. Some of the things we've done recently are like a wind-blown or air malt. We're doing some darker wheats for a couple of people. We have malted corn, which a lot of other folks aren't able to do.
So basically a brewery would probably come to you and be like, hey, we want to brew this specific beer.
I found a historical beer style.
Okay.
There's a particular malt that went into it. Can you emulate that? We can try. It's been very interesting to kind of explore what's happening in modern craft brewing and also look at a throwback to traditional practices and see how that fits into this process, because there's a tie between those two spaces for sure.
So basically all of our material, when it finishes kilning, we transfer it using a vacuum into the meridian hopper over here. It comes out through that conveyor belt, the orange piece over here, into this rootlet conveyor, or actually rootlet auger. Basically, because it's growing and you've got rootlets on there, you need to knock that off. So this auger, you get enough volume in there and it'll actually kind of abrade itself and knock off the rootlet material.
So this is the first stage of cleaning.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, so it'll go through this auger here, up the bucket elevator, and then over into the seed cleaner, sorter, separator. That's where we have different size screens depending on what grain we're cleaning. Basically, we're trying to get this as uniform size as we can. So all our thin material will fall out into this guy.
And then what happens with this stuff?
We'll go ahead and we'll give this to a farmer.
Gotcha.
And then for anyone who likes meat, he brings us a pig a couple times a year.
Sweet. That's like a fair trade.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
I don't eat meat, but
okay.
everyone else likes it. So yeah, so while we're cleaning, we're pulling a sample throughout the entire process. So typically every 5 to 10 minutes, we're pulling a little scoop off the side. You want it representative throughout the entire batch. And then with that sample, we'll go ahead, we run in-house sensory with it.
We're in the middle of batch QA/QC using the hot steep method that was developed by the Society of Brewing Chemists. You're essentially making a malt tea. The idea for us is that we're using this to assess malt quality. We want a true to brand product hitting the streets each and every batch. So we're looking for each batch of Pilsner to hit a known color spec and a set of flavor attributes. You know, I'm looking for sharp, acidic off flavors. If it's too toasty, if the color's too dark, if it's too rich in flavor, it should have certain notes like biscuits, bread, honey, some green tea in the finish.
Craft malt is judged a little harder than your commercial malt houses. We're the new guy on the block, and so we have to exceed expectations to meet what our brewers' demands are.
Basically, right now, we've cleaned our barley. So we've got 2-row Pilsner in here right now. We've got it up in this hopper here. So everything that's cleaned, we can fit 5 tons in there. It's gonna come out of this hopper and then into this automated bagger right here. Next, goes through this sewer. So basically that happens, we get another guy down at the other end of our packaging line here. So we do about 2,000 pounds on a pallet, rows with 5 bags per row, so 8 rows tall.
How long would it take to do like the full?
It kind of depends on who's operating
Gotcha.
it, but
if you got the A-team in.
You got the A-team, you can do a pallet in about 15 minutes.
Would this pass inspection?
Pretty close.
Pretty close. Not at all.
I might restack 1 or 2.
And then obviously besides me, who bought a couple 50-pound or 50-pound bags.
Homebrewers?
Yeah, besides homebrewers, who's your main customer at the end of the day?
Regionally specific craft brewers, and specifically most North Carolina craft brewers, our target audience.
Okay.
We have about 150 customers a year. Almost all of those are based out of the Southeast.
I know Sierra Nevada is using some of your grains, and also I know New Belgium has, and obviously
New Belgium has in the past. We've done a little bit with the Canarchy Group, Oscar Blues, Wicked Weed, Burial Beer. Fanta Flora is a great customer of ours.
Okay. It's a pretty phenomenal setup here.
Thanks.
And really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to let us come check out your amazing facility, and it's been a treat.
It was great. Thanks a lot.